The drone hovered like a loyal hawk locked in midair above the suburban roofline, and then without warning it unleashed a siren so loud a car alarm in the next block went off. Birds scattered, dogs howled, and in the center of it all stood Karen, arms flailing, house slippers falling off as the voice from the hovering machine declared in crisp robotic clarity, "Step away from the stolen property. This is your final warning." You wouldn't believe me if I told you this all started because I ordered migraine medication with same-day drone delivery and some nosy HOA lady decided it was her patriotic duty to intercept it with a pool net. But here we are. That's the thing about suburban warfare. It often begins with the smallest of sparks. It began the day I, Marcus Chen, ran out of meds. No big deal for most people, but for me it's the difference between functioning and lying in a dark room with a pillow over my face wishing the earth would spin a little quieter. I live in a test neighborhood that's part of a drone delivery beta program. It's supposed to be efficient, secure, and idiot-proof. Emphasis on supposed to be. I placed the order from my phone, popped in noise-canceling earbuds, and waited the 42 minutes it would take for the autonomous quadcopter to arrive with my custom compounded headache relief. I even had the landing mat out in the driveway like always, complete with the QR code and beacon light. Nothing could go wrong. Except it did. The first rule of suburban living: never assume technology is immune to human interference. When the drone's estimated arrival time passed and the map still showed it hovering 2 houses away, I walked outside to check. The driveway was empty. My package status said delivered, but there was no box, no drone, no whirring in the sky. Nothing. For a few moments I thought maybe I'd zoned out and it had landed somewhere weird. I checked the bushes, the roof, the mailbox. Still nothing. Then I heard the unmistakable buzz of rotors, very faint, like it was moving away. I ran out to the street and looked up just in time to see it. My drone, a sleek gray beauty with blue LED lights, was flying away, but not like it was piloting itself. It was tilted, jerking oddly, and in the net below it, yes, a literal pool net, was my medication box swinging like loot in a video game, and standing beneath it in her backyard like some suburban Bond villain was Karen. She was yelling at it, waving the net, trying to bring it down. Her little rat dog yapped hysterically at her feet. I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick photo, then opened my app and tried to engage the emergency recall protocol. Too late. The drone dipped, clipped the tree branch, and disappeared behind her fence. Delivery failed. In the suburbs, territorial disputes aren't fought with guns or tanks, but with pool nets and property violations. I walked over to her house and rang the bell. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. But through the frosted glass I could see movement. Karen was inside. She was ignoring me. I left and checked the drone's tracking history. Final GPS ping. Her backyard. I tried the customer service line for the delivery company, but they were about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. "We'll look into it," they said, as if it could be a missed delivery, right, and the neighbor who's tried to ban Halloween decorations, block community Wi-Fi, and once demanded a neighbor repaint their door because red is too aggressive, just accidentally intercepted a prescription drone. So I reviewed my security camera footage. That's when I got visual proof. The drone hovered in for landing, was mid-descent, and then a long-handled pool net swung up from the side yard like a baseball bat and yanked the box right out of the sky. Karen stood triumphantly in her floral bathrobe, holding the box and waving it at the drone like she'd won a prize. My medication, my property, on camera being literally stolen out of the air. I posted the footage to our neighborhood group chat, not to stir trouble, just asking politely if anyone had seen a delivery drone accidentally rerouted. Within minutes, I had 3 private messages from neighbors saying Karen had been spotted bragging that she caught a spy drone and was confiscating it for community safety. One even sent me a blurry photo of her holding the box like a trophy. She told them she was taking it to the HOA inspection. I couldn't tell if this was a comedy sketch or a real-life security breach by the president of passive aggression. The second rule of suburban warfare: document everything. Your neighbors are both your intelligence network and your audience. I should probably explain that Karen isn't just a nosy neighbor. She's the de facto HOA queen bee. She runs everything from newsletter edits to lawn violations. If someone's Christmas lights are up 2 days past New Year's, she's the one knocking. She once measured a neighbor's grass with a literal ruler, and now, apparently, she's expanded her reign to include low-altitude aircraft. I decided I wouldn't confront her again in person. This was bigger than a neighborly squabble. It was about principle now. I went back inside, fired up my workstation, and started tinkering with my backup drone, a newer prototype I've been programming with a few deterrent features. Nothing dangerous, just a loud siren, audio playback, and some precision hovering control. This one wasn't for deliveries. It was for field tests, and maybe, just maybe, for justice. By that night, Karen had posted to her social media a selfie with my package, captioned, "Another successful neighborhood defense. Don't worry, folks, I'll report this spycraft to the HOA tomorrow." The audacity, the utter jaw-dropping boldness. I stared at the photo, rereading the caption 5 times. That's when the idea fully formed in my mind. She wanted attention. She wanted to claim authority over the skies. Fine. I'd give her the attention she wanted, but not the kind she'd enjoy. My drone siren was fully functional. The speaker was crystal clear. I just needed to wait for the perfect moment. Not an ambush. A performance, one she'd never forget. Because Karen didn't know it yet, but the next time she stepped outside, the sky would talk back. In the game of suburban chess, sometimes you need to sacrifice a pawn to take down a queen. The morning after Karen's backyard drone snatch felt like the calm before a storm. I woke up early, not because of anticipation, but because my migraine was now full force, thanks to the missing meds. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running over everything in my head. The footage, the social media post, the way she had smirked in that photo as if she were the hero of some bizarre suburban war movie. I knew she wasn't going to back down, and I wasn't about to either. So I got up, brewed the strongest coffee my French press could handle, and started planning my next move. But before I could finalize the setup for the siren drone, I got an email from the HOA. Subject line, URGNT INOTOIC, unauthorized aerial devices in the community. The body of the email was short and painfully self-important. It claimed that residents have expressed concern over unauthorized aerial surveillance, and therefore all drone activity within community boundaries was now suspended pending board review. It didn't mention my name, but the implication was clear. Karen had weaponized the HOA again. About 20 minutes later, the neighborhood group chat lit up with confused messages. Wait, since when are drones banned? Does this mean we can't even have Amazon drop-offs now? Karen again. And then right on cue, Karen herself responded with a paragraph-length justification about public safety, data privacy, and something about how certain individuals are importing government-grade surveillance tech to spy on private backyards. The audacity was impressive, even for her. I wasn't importing anything. I was just trying to receive a package without someone playing Queen Interceptor. I replied with a single message. Just to clarify, the drone you confiscated was delivering legally prescribed medication and was registered under FAA guidelines. Footage of the interception is available for anyone interested. That shut her up, at least temporarily. A few neighbors chimed in with support, while others tried to keep the peace, but the lines were drawn. Karen had turned a non-event into a community panic, and now she was lobbying to ban drones altogether. The third rule of suburban warfare: when your opponent escalates, prepare to counter-escalate. Later that day, I took a walk around the block, more to clear my head than anything else. The sun was out, lawns were trimmed, kids were biking with their helmets slightly askew. It would have been peaceful, except every few steps someone stopped me to ask about the drone thing. Apparently, Karen had told several people that my drones were flying over backyards, scanning people and even recording conversations. One neighbor whispered to me, "She told me you hacked the HOA's internet to reroute drone signals." I nearly choked on my bottled water. Karen wasn't just making accusations. She was writing conspiracy thrillers. That evening, I decided to attend the HOA meeting. Normally I avoid them like bad sushi, but this one felt necessary. Karen always sat at the front, flanked by two other board members she had essentially bullied into submission over the years. She stood up with the usual smug grin, adjusted her blazer like she was about to give a TE talk, and began her presentation. We are here to address an urgent matter of public concern. A rogue drone has been spotted hovering low over several properties, including mine. It was intercepted mid-flight before it could cause any harm. I almost laughed. Intercepted? She made it sound like she was in a war zone. Then came the dramatic moment. Karen held up the small gray box that had been inside the drone's payload net. This, she declared, was retrieved from the vehicle. It has no label, no name, just a mysterious medical bottle. Who knows what could have been inside? I stood up slowly. That was my prescription for migraines. It was labeled until you tore it open. There was a beat of silence. A few neighbors murmured. One person near the back snorted. Karen wasn't expecting me to show up, let alone challenge her in front of the board. She backed up fast. Well, I had no way of knowing that at the time. It could have been a hazard, a safety issue. I was just trying to protect the community. By swinging a pool net at a drone, I asked, you endangered the neighborhood a lot more than my flying ibuprofen ever could. The board looked uncomfortable. One of the members, Rick, scratched his chin and asked, do you have footage of the event? Yes, I said, pulling out a USB drive and offering it. This contains footage from my own property's security camera. It shows everything, including the part where Karen yells, "Gotcha," as she grabs the package. Karen's face turned pink, then red. She tried to interject, but the board was already taking the drive and plugging it into a laptop. As the video played on a nearby projector, the room fell silent. And there she was, in glorious high definition, snatching my drone's delivery like it was a prize on a game show. When the video ended, you could hear a pin drop until someone in the back chuckled and said, "So much for national security." That opened the floodgates. People started voicing complaints about Karen's other antics, how she once fined someone for wind chimes being too whimsical, or how she demanded all garden gnomes be facing the same direction. Her reign of nitpicking terror was suddenly under scrutiny, and I wasn't even trying. I just wanted my medication. But Karen wasn't done yet. After the meeting, she stormed out, muttering something about legal action and community bylaws. That night, she filed a formal complaint against me for violating airspace, attaching screenshots of drone footage she claimed invaded her privacy. She even uploaded a grainy photo of the drone to her Facebook with the caption, "My property is not your fly zone." I almost admired her persistence. Almost. What she didn't know was that while she was busy spinning social media narratives, I was preparing for the next phase. The backup drone was ready. The siren was installed. The voice playback was loaded with legally accurate warnings. I double-checked the altitude limits, the noise ordinances, and every airspace regulation applicable to residential zones. Karen wanted a spectacle. She was about to get one. Only this time, the drone wasn't delivering a package. It was delivering a message. When dealing with a suburban tyrant, sometimes you need to fight fire with fire, or in this case, drone with drone. The day of Karen's infamous HOA barbecue was sunny, loud, and smelled like overcooked chicken and self-importance. She had pulled out all the stops, plastic flags on every hedge, her Bluetooth speaker blasting elevator jazz, and laminated copies of the HOA bylaws set neatly on every picnic table. It was her perfect performance piece, where she could pretend to be everyone's favorite leader while hiding the fact that she'd recently stolen a drone and blamed it on national security. But what she didn't know was that today's event would become the most memorable neighborhood gathering since the pool turned green last summer. And this time she wouldn't be the host, she'd be the punchline. I had spent the morning prepping everything down to the second. The siren-equipped drone, one of my test units that never went to market, was fully charged, stabilized, and uploaded with not only the original security footage, but also a few choice sound bites that I may or may not have edited for maximum embarrassment. I double-checked my GPS markers, ran a simulation over my driveway, and practiced maneuvering the drone's positioning until it hovered with perfect stillness. From a technical standpoint, I was ready, but emotionally, I still had a touch of hesitation. Was I about to go too far? Then I remembered the throbbing pain behind my eyes, the 3 nights without proper medication, and the HOA letter accusing me of violating sky etiquette. That hesitation vanished. By 4:00 p.m., the party was in full swing. I didn't need to attend. I could hear it from my kitchen, the laughter, the squeals of kids running around, and Karen's voice amplified over her $99 megaphone, welcoming guests and reminding them of the no unauthorized tech rule. She even made a sarcastic comment about keeping the skies safe for citizens and satellites. That was the cue. I walked out to my backyard, remote in hand, tablet mounted and streaming live footage from the drone's camera as it ascended silently over the rooftop. Its quiet buzz was no louder than a distant fly, and its camera locked onto the GPS point I'd marked earlier, Karen's pergola, right over her precious patio. I tapped a button, and the drone hovered directly above the center of her yard. Below it, families were digging into overcooked burgers, and Karen was giving a speech about enforcing harmony. No one noticed the drone at first, not until I activated the speaker with a simple line. "Hi, Karen. Forgot something." Her head jerked upward like she'd heard the voice of God. A few people looked up too, squinting against the sun, trying to make out what was floating over them. Before anyone could react further, I activated the siren. It shrieked with the force of 1,000 fire drills, piercing the air with a 120 decibel blast that made people drop their plates and cover their ears. Napkins flew. Cups tipped over. One woman fell backward into a bush. Karen screamed, a sound that cut right through the mechanical whale as she stumbled toward her patio, flailing her arms at the sky like she could swat the drone out of existence. The siren continued for 10 seconds, just long enough for everyone to hear the next audio clip kick in. All she had to do was not steal my prescription box. My voice said calmly, piped through the drone. But no, Karen had to touch the drone. Laughter erupted from the side of the yard. Kids were pointing. One guy filmed the whole thing with his phone while laughing so hard he dropped his soda. Karen was now yelling something unintelligible, completely drowned out by the final clip. The actual footage of her stealing the drone, playing on a loop on the mounted LED screen beneath the drone's belly. She had snatched it like a prize, smiled, and walked away. Now it was displayed like an embarrassing TikTok fail video. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" Another person called out, "That's your HOA president, huh?" Karen's face turned every shade of red known to humanity. She grabbed her megaphone and tried to speak over the crowd, but her words were a jumbled mess of violation and privacy and terrorism. Nobody listened. The drone's audio cut in one last time. Drone theft is a federal offense. Returning the stolen property may reduce consequences. Then, like a magician exiting the stage, the drone lifted slightly higher and floated backward, retreating smoothly to my yard as the crowd erupted into chaotic chatter. The siren was off, the footage loop ended, and the show was complete. But the fallout had just begun. The fourth rule of suburban warfare: be prepared for the counterattack. Less than an hour later, 2 police officers showed up at my house. I wasn't surprised. I had already prepared everything: registration details, footage timestamps, and legal documents proving the drone's ownership and the medication delivery logs. The officers were calm and even a bit amused. One of them had already seen the footage on Facebook. I handed over a thumb drive and said, "She has my drone locked in her pool shed. I just want it back." After a few clarifying questions, the officers left to go speak with Karen. The drone, still on standby in my garage, recorded their conversation from across the street. I watched from my tablet as Karen tried to twist the story, claiming the drone had attacked her or spied on her or carried unmarked cargo. The officers weren't buying it. They asked to see the contents of her shed. At first she refused. Then, realizing she wasn't going to win, she stomped toward the gate, unlocked the latch, and flung it open. Inside sat my original drone, still intact, and a whole bunch of other random things. A neighbor's tennis ball launcher, 2 folding chairs, someone's dog leash, even a deflated soccer ball. It was like a suburban pawn shop of stuff she had claimed as violations. The officers recovered my drone and returned it to me. One of them said, "You might want to password lock the next one." I smiled. "Oh, it's not about locks. It's about learning who not to mess with." He laughed and walked back to the cruiser. As news spread, the group chat exploded. People posted memes of Karen with a butterfly net. Others photoshopped her face onto sci-fi villains. Someone uploaded a slow-mo montage of the siren event set to opera music, and while Karen tried to play the victim online, the narrative had already turned against her. She had overreached again, and now the neighborhood wasn't just tolerating her anymore. They were turning on her. I sat on my porch that night, both drones beside me, finally wearing one of my migraine patches. The sky was clear, the air was quiet, and for the first time in days, my head didn't feel like it was splitting open. I had expected to feel triumph, maybe revenge. But what I really felt was peace and a strange, satisfying calm that came from knowing that even in a world of bylaws and backyard dictators, the truth, especially when delivered from the sky, still had the power to set things right. In the suburbs, justice comes from unexpected places, sometimes from 400 feet above. The next morning, things were quiet, but not in the peaceful, birds chirping kind of way. It was the silence that only follows a public meltdown. Karen's backyard looked like it had hosted a hurricane, with tipped-over folding chairs, sauce-stained paper plates still scattered across the lawn, and one very lonely plastic flag stuck upside down in a shrub. The HOA group chat was still lit from the night before. Dozens of new messages, screenshots, memes, and videos of the Karen versus drone debacle had gone semi-viral overnight. One neighbor had uploaded the siren clip to TikTok with the caption, "Neighborhood justice served cold," and it already had over 80,000 views. Another posted a slow-motion zoom-in of Karen's shocked face when the drone siren blared, edited to dramatic orchestral music. I'll admit I watched that one twice, but the part I didn't expect came around noon, when an envelope landed at my front door. Hand-delivered. No postage. Inside was a notice from the HOA marked Emergency SESSION. Member Conduct Review. It was vague, filled with generic legal-sounding language, and scheduled for the next day. And even though it didn't mention me by name, I knew exactly who was behind it. Karen had not gone quietly into the embarrassment. She was doubling down. That night, as if to make it official, she posted on the HOA's online bulletin, "We will not be intimidated by illegal aerial harassment. Community integrity must be protected. There will be consequences." She even ended it with a signature, HOA President Karen L. Hightower. I was amazed she didn't sign it in Comic Sans. As petty as it all was, I knew this wasn't just about a drone anymore. Karen had made this a legal matter, or at least was trying to, and I had to be ready. So I called my cousin Sophia. Sophia wasn't just family. She was a real estate lawyer who specialized in HOA violations and property tech disputes. She once won a case where an HOA sued a man for painting his mailbox too bold. She got the guy damages and a free paint job. She was perfect. I sent her the footage, the letters, even the HOA bylaws Karen had been quoting. She called me back laughing after 20 minutes. "She's got nothing," Sophia said. "The drone was FAA compliant, on your own property, and the footage proves she stole it. Honestly, if she pushes this, she's the one in trouble." Still, I wanted more than just a legal defense. I wanted this circus to end. Sophia helped me draft a formal complaint to the HOA board, citing Karen's misuse of authority, her history of unauthorized confiscations, and her personal attacks masked as community policy. I also included photos neighbors had privately sent me of items Karen had confiscated over the last year. A kid's skateboard, a solar garden light, someone's welcome mat with a pineapple on it, all stashed in her shed, all claimed as violations. One neighbor even had a screen recording of Karen messaging him about relocating his yard art to maintain uniform curb appeal, followed by a picture of his gnome in her trunk. The fifth rule of suburban warfare: always collect evidence before the battle begins. The next day's HOA session was held in the clubhouse with its squeaky chairs, flickering lights, and fake ficus trees that had probably never been cleaned. Karen arrived early, wearing a neck brace and sunglasses like a local celebrity after a scandal. She had a stack of folders in one arm and an expression that could have curdled milk. I walked in just before the meeting started, holding nothing but my phone and a bottle of water. Rick, one of the board members who had always been visibly afraid of Karen, cleared his throat and read from a clipboard. This emergency session has been called to address a series of complaints filed by and against board member Karen Hightower regarding conduct, property interference, and policy abuse. Karen stood before he finished. Before we begin, I'd like to submit this document showing the psychological harm caused to me by the recent drone attack. I interrupted, not loudly but firmly. It wasn't an attack. It was a retrieval. She ignored me and kept talking, but the board finally had enough. The other two members, Diana and Leonard, requested to see the footage Sophia had sent me. I played it on a laptop hooked to the wall projector. Once again, the room watched her snatch the drone, smirk, and drag it inside. Then the siren clip played, followed by the reaction from the barbecue crowd. And this time, it wasn't just funny. It was damning. Diana frowned. Karen, you told us the drone crashed on your property and you recovered it for safety reasons, but this clearly shows you grabbing it off someone else's porch mid-hover. Leonard nodded. And you kept it in your shed for over 24 hours without reporting it. Karen stammered something about vigilant neighborhood response, but no one was listening anymore. I opened the next file. A slideshow of neighbor-submitted photos showing their belongings inside her property, the leash, the chairs, even a bird feeder. Then came the final blow. Sophia had dug into Karen's past. Turns out Karen had a prior record in another HOA community for unauthorized retention of property and falsification of violation citations. She had been kicked off that board and moved here 6 months later. When I handed over that document, even Rick looked stunned. Diana leaned back in her chair and whispered, "Why are we just hearing about this now?" Karen exploded. She started shouting that this was all a smear campaign, that she was being targeted for enforcing order. He flew an unregistered drone over my property. That's surveillance, she barked. I calmly replied, registered, approved, and on private delivery mode. I have the FAA paperwork. She tried to grab the projector cord, but Diana stood and told her to stop. Then came the words I hadn't expected to hear that day. "We're suspending your board position pending further investigation," Leonard announced. Effective immediately, Karen's mouth fell open. She looked around as if someone would stand up and defend her. No one did. She grabbed her folders, muttered something about lawyers, and stormed out, bumping into a ficus tree on her way. It didn't even wobble. Outside, a few neighbors were waiting. They had heard the meeting was about the drone fiasco and stayed to watch the fallout. One guy clapped when Karen marched past. Another leaned over and said, "Took long enough." And me? I just walked home slowly, finally able to breathe. No more warnings stuck on my door. No more passive-aggressive emails about long color. No more surveillance claims from someone who couldn't tell a package drone from a UFO. In the end, justice in suburbia isn't about who has the most power. It's about who has the most evidence. Later that evening, I got a call from Diana. She said the board would be issuing a public apology for how the situation was handled and that they'd be revisiting all citations Karen had issued in the past 6 months. I thanked her and offered to help if they needed tech assistance with updating community guidelines. After all, I wasn't anti-rules. I was just anti-dictator. That night, for the first time in days, I sat outside with a cool drink. No sirens, no meetings, and no stress. Both drones were docked on the table beside me, lights blinking gently. I looked up at the stars, peaceful and untouched, and laughed. Karen wanted to control the skies, but in the end, the sky wrote its own ending. The week after Karen's removal from the HOA board was filled with a strange kind of cautious optimism around the neighborhood. The same people who used to avoid eye contact at HOA meetings were now chatting in driveways, comparing old citation slips, and even daring to decorate their porches with quirky flags and seasonal doormats again. For the first time in months, it felt like the community was breathing. There were still some whispers, mainly from the few residents who had bought into Karen's brand of overregulation, but most folks seemed thrilled that the self-proclaimed sheriff of suburbia had been put in check. Meanwhile, I was enjoying the calm, but I had a feeling the story wasn't quite over. Karen had gone quiet. Too quiet. No Facebook rants, no printed flyers on lampposts, no HOA newsletter updates signed in aggressive font. But silence wasn't her style. She was planning something. I could feel it. And then it came. A certified letter delivered by courier, addressed to me directly. Inside was a 2-page notice from Karen's attorney, accusing me of emotional damage, aerial intimidation, and technological harassment. She demanded compensation for pain and suffering, plus a formal apology and the retirement of all drone activity within visual proximity of her home. I read it twice, then sent it straight to Sophia. She called me 10 minutes later, already laughing. She can't sue you for exposing her own actions, Sophia said. This is a scare tactic. She's hoping you'll panic and give her something to make her go away. Don't. If anything, she's the one who opened herself up to legal action. Still, I wasn't interested in dragging things through court. I didn't want revenge. What I wanted was a clean slate and to make sure she never tried anything like this again. But I also wanted to leave the neighborhood with a message, something firm but not cruel, something public yet perfectly legal. And thanks to a little help from the very community Karen tried to control, I had the perfect idea. In suburbia, the strongest weapon isn't litigation. It's community solidarity. It started with the block email thread. One neighbor suggested organizing a drone safety workshop to clear the air and help everyone understand what was legal, what was respectful, and how to use aerial tech without conflict. Another neighbor offered to bring refreshments. Someone else volunteered their driveway. Before long, it had turned into a full-blown neighborhood event, a mix between a tech demonstration, a community meetup, and a symbolic protest. And yes, drones would be involved, lots of them. We called it Drone Day. Flyers went out. The HOA board, now under new leadership, approved the plan and even offered to provide folding chairs and extension cords. I built a little landing platform in my yard, programmed my drones with flight paths that respected privacy lines, and installed microphones with pre-recorded voiceovers explaining FAA rules in simple terms. One neighbor had a mini drone he let kids race around cones, while another displayed an aerial camera setup that helped her monitor her backyard garden for pests. It was all very wholesome, informative, and drama-free until Karen showed up. She arrived in a visor and oversized sunglasses, her mouth a tight line of disapproval. No one invited her, but she hovered near the edge of the gathering like a storm cloud waiting to burst. I half expected her to have another net in hand, but this time she stayed quiet, probably aware that every phone in the area was now automatically raised the second she appeared. I walked over calmly and said, "Hi, Karen. Would you like to participate?" She didn't answer, just narrowed her eyes and glared at the nearest drone like it had insulted her family. I returned to the center of the gathering and announced the highlight of the day, a demo of a real-time parcel drop using one of my drones. This wasn't about showing off. It was about proving how seamless and safe the system could be when it wasn't tampered with. I programmed the drone to pick up a small package, an empty mock-up of the one Karen had originally stolen, and fly it directly over her roof on its way to my porch. The route was public airspace. The elevation was legal. The delivery was harmless, but the message was crystal clear. As the drone lifted off, everyone went quiet. It glided upward, hovered for a moment, then began its gentle cruise across the rooftops. It passed over Karen's house without incident. No sirens, no lights, just the soft hum of calibrated rotors, but dangling from the drone's base was a tiny banner. Nothing aggressive, just a small cloth tag that read, "Return to sender." Laughter broke out. A few people clapped. Karen spun around and stormed off without a word, but the silence she left behind said everything. She had lost, not just the argument or the position on the board. She had lost the neighborhood. The fear she once commanded had turned into mockery, and mockery, unlike fear, doesn't obey citations or bylaw threats. Later that night, the new HOA president stopped by to thank me. He handed me a letter from the board officially recognizing Karen's removal as permanent, along with a refund for the false fine she issued me 3 months ago for drone-shaped shadows violating fence aesthetics. I didn't even remember that one, but I appreciated the gesture. More than that, I appreciated the shift that had occurred, not just in policy but in mindset. People weren't scared anymore. They were awake. As I packed up the drone gear, my neighbor's teenage son ran over, eyes wide. "Hey, can you teach me how to do the siren thing?" he asked. I laughed. "Let's stick to the basics first." But I had to admit it was tempting to keep that feature installed. You never know when another mini dictator might rise again. Better to be prepared. I closed the garage, turned off the equipment, and stood in my driveway as the last streaks of sunlight faded. The neighborhood was quiet again, but this time it was the good kind of quiet, peaceful, balanced. No more surprise fines. No more bizarre HOA mandates about mailbox font sizes. No more Karen screaming about airspace rights like she worked for the Pentagon. Just neighbors, families, kids on bikes, drones flying safely above doing exactly what they were designed to do, deliver, not destroy. It was over. Not with a courtroom drama or a physical fight, but with something more powerful. Exposure, logic, and a healthy dose of karma. And as I finally sat down on my porch, cool drink in hand, the last drone of the day returned to its dock with a soft click. Its mission complete. And so was mine. The final rule of suburban warfare. Sometimes victory isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about changing the battlefield forever.